I'm paddling hard here. I wonder if I wax my kayak, would that make it go faster? Here's the results of my research that answers that question. This week on Kayak Hack. Look at the bottom of my kayak after a season of hard use. This can't make it easy to glide smoothly through the water. Here's my approach to season-end maintenance on this kayak. It's been through the wars this season. It's been scraped on rocks, on oyster beds, and boy, it is not smooth on the bottom. So I'm going to use my sander. I'm going to start with 400 grit, 600, and then 800 to make sure I knock down all the sides of the scratches. Now, I'm not going to try and sound out every scratch and every gouge. In fact, if you do that, that'll just ruin your boat. Rather, the idea is make it smooth around those scratches, and that way the water will flow smoothly over it. Every one of those scratches turns up a little bit of a side, and that's what catches the water, and that's what increases your drag. So that's what I'm after today, is to knock those down and recognize that there'll still be scratches on here. After I sand, the question will be, should I wax? There's a lot of different opinions out there on the internet in terms of whether waxing does any good or not. So I went to the Epic Kayak site, and they race kayaks, and who better to tell us how to make a boat slide through the water than a racer? Well, it turns out that they looked at waxing their kayaks and concluded that wax adds to the coefficient of friction and actually slows the boats down. Now, it's an insignificant amount, it's 0.001%, but it still slowed it down. So the only advantage of waxing is that it allows your kayak to repel UV and any slime and grime from cutting through the water. But I read on another site that the wax actually puts off an odor for a long period of time, and that odor might repel fish. So my approach is I'm not going to wax, rather I'm just going to apply the 303 protectant to give me a good UV protection layer and then leave it at that. So I'll sand it down, I'll get it smooth, and then I'll UV 303 it, but I'm not going to wax it. In fact, Old Town recommends against putting wax on their canoes and kayaks, basically just because it makes it unsightly. They don't comment on whether it improves the performance or not. So I'm not going to wax. Before I get going on the sanding, the first thing I'm going to do is look for any deep scratches that have turned up sides. You know, kind of look like this. That way I can take my welder, I can turn those sides back down and do an initial smoothing. There are only a couple deep gouges like that. I don't want to add HDPE to that because I think that'll create a lump and it'll make more of a mess as I try and smooth that out onto the rest of the kayak. Here's a fairly deep cut, and as I run my finger over it, I can feel where the plastic has been peeled back. So I'm going to take the welder and just run it along there and close that up. This is where you want the rounded tip as opposed to that triangle tip you get on the Harbor Freight welder. So I'm just going to run this back and forth a few times and fold that excess back into the scratch. All set. Maybe the best way to figure out whether I've improved the performance is the scratch test. Hear all that noise? That's my fingernails hitting on all the imperfections. Let's see how noisy that is after I'm done. So how are we doing on that scratch test? Well, it's not as noisy as I drag it back and forth. It feels remarkably smoother, and I think the sanding, as you can hear there, did all I needed it to do. You know, I really like the way this kayak performs after I sanded it down. It feels like it's going through the water much faster than it was before I took out all those nicks and cuts. So I'm going to keep that in mind and add that to my repertoire of kayak maintenance items that I probably need to do twice a year instead of just at the end of the season like I did this time. But this is feeling really, really smooth. So I think sanding is a winner. Comments? What's your perspective? Please subscribe. Take care.